We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It's Saturday, and as so often the case, Saturday, Ed stops by. And it's always a pleasure to have Ed on. Ed and I have known each other a long, long time. We worked on the radio for a long, long time. So it's a very easy conversation when uh, it's not as easy as the conversation I have with my wife, though.
Yeah,
No,
how's
we've been
that?
married. Well, we've been married 42 years. We used to each other, and it's a really simple rule. When she talks, I just shut the fuck up. So it's a little different than you and I. We're a little more equally set, but with my wife, it's simple. Just shut the fuck up.
What's
Anyway,
always discretion is always the better part of valor, you know.
yeah, there's no question about that. You don't stay married a long time without knowing that phrase. Well, Ed, every time we come and talk, there's a lot of just. It used to be that we'd have news stories or maybe a
Yeah.
scandal. But now every time I meet up with you, there's just some unfucking believably ridiculously stupid shit. It's like somebody's making this stuff up. We live in a surreal world, and it's just a matter of how much sillier it can get. I mean, it's all
Yeah.
scary, it's all devastating, but it's just ridiculous.
It is. I mean, the quote, big, beautiful bill that they passed at 1 o'clock in the morning, so hoping nobody would notice, apparently, is set to devastate Medicaid, maybe impact Medicare as well. Who knows what? Because
Yeah, yeah.
basically it increases taxes on the poorest and gives huge tax breaks to the richest, and also adds about what the estimates vary from 3.5 to $5 trillion to the deficit, which all those Republican deficit hawks obviously don't give a shit when
Right,
about now. You know, they never do when they're in power, but only when Democrats are in power is the deficit a problem, right?
right, exactly.
Fortunately,
It,
the Senate still exists, so that bill will have to be, amended somehow in the Senate. But given that they could pass it today, if all the Republicans voted for it, who knows? I know there's some holdouts, but Trump will bring pressure on them. We'll see how that goes.
well, that's a weird thing, in the House. I was a little surprised that it passed in the House because there were so many people dead set against it, and for good reason. The people who vote for this bill, in my estimation, down the road, that is political suicide. And I'd always thought that the Republicans, once Donald Trump became too much of a liability and affected their ability to get reelected, that would be the time when they'd push back and kick Donald Trump to the curb. Well, this is that time for the House of Representatives. They voted for a bill that will cut Medicaid and Medicare and hurt people in their communities come election time. And that is going to be the number one thing that's brought up. And it's going to cost them elections. But they still bent the knee to that fucker.
Well, the thing is, they don't pay attention. Let me give you an example. Right now, we're having municipal elections here in the small town where I live in Tennessee. For some reason, they've always held it in June. I believe they're finally going to move it to November, where the general elections are held, and it would save them something like $20,000 to do that. It makes no
Oh, good
sense to
God.
have it where they do now, but it's been tradition. But I talked with one of the candidates who was instrumental in getting that election moved. That's one of the things he's running on. I did this, saved this $20,000. He pointed out
Right.
that the last time we had a municipal election in a county that has something like 20,000 people in it, I'm not sure the exact number right now. 236 people voted for the mayor and the city council, right?
Wow. Wow.
236 people out of that many. Now, I thought, well, okay, it's a local election. Everybody knows everybody. And quite frankly, nobody had, people drop out and change, but very few people were ever unelected, right? But um, the even the presidential election had less than 3,000 people voting in it.
Wow.
Less than 3,000 out of approximately 20,000 people chose to exercise their sacred duty to vote. And you will find that, especially in the red states, but not only in the red states. If you go out state Minnesota, you may find something similar. I'm not sure. Maybe people are more engaged there. I don't know. But that is it, this disengagement, this reliance on simply on pundits on Fox News and so forth but anyway, if they don't vote, they don't really, it's their lack of voting, of course, that makes a difference. But they don't pay attention. They don't realize they just play it like it's, two football teams, their home team, and then the other one, and that's the way they look at it. They don't look at issues. They don't realize that this tax bill, quite frankly, where I live is a very low income area. I mean, $35,000 is the median income, but
Wow.
people exist, I think actually 31,000. People exist on much less than that. And for example, this bill would add $1,000 in tax, federal tax, to those making 17,000 or less. Now, when you consider the average rent is about 1,200, that's about $14,000 a year by my reckoning. So people are making $17,000, paying $14,000 for rent, $1,000 in federal taxes. Pretty soon, you got nothing to eat on. But they
Right.
don't seem to realize that.
Well, there are people right now in that situation because I'll be honest with you, at $17,000 a year, at least where I'm at, you can't live on that. You can't pay rent, pay for transportation, and pay for food. It's just not possible. $17,000 a year is poverty level, and at twice that, 34,000 is tough
Mhm.
to get by. So the idea that they're going to take money off the lowest and the poorest among us, it's basically their attitude. Well, nobody will care about those people. They're just broke and they'll just be broker and they won't even notice it. Do you think that all these people that don't vote because, you know, I'm not interested in elections, doesn't do any good if I vote. Do you think once they start feeling the pain that's imminent here, it's going to wake some people up to vote, or are they just going to be oblivious and be like the frog in the boiling water?
I go with the latter. I don't expect a lot of movement, quite frankly. And part of the problem, I must lay at the feet of the Democrats, they do not invest money in states like this. They don't. I mean, we saw what Stacey Abrams was able to do in Georgia, and basically turn it from a red state to a blue state for the election, right? So if they put the right people in and actually put the money in there, um, then I think we could turn some of these states blue. The problem is, I think most of the money goes to shoring up incumbents in the blue states, in defending those, which in many cases they don't even need to be defended. But that's where a lot of the money goes, or it goes into kind of general ads and so forth that don't really reach the people that need to be reached. Because if you're not advertising on Fox News, they're not seeing it.
Right. Well, the thing about it is what I'm seeing of the Democrats right now, they seem like what I remember state government being like when I worked with a state government. Um, they're lazy. They go along to get along. They do whatever they think will make them look like they're doing their job, and they don't accomplish anything. Like for example, you talk about finding somebody to run in these red states. They come in and say, "Oh well, we're probably going to lose anyway, so no reason to put money into it." When if you took a look at what people vote for, while it does come into play Republican and Democrat, but people vote for personalities or somebody they like or somebody they can feel like they are connected to. That's
Yeah.
why you got Democrats voting for Donald Trump. If you took the time to develop a candidate, even on a small scale, that had the right kind of personality, not the typical Democratic personality, you could probably win those red areas just by virtue of the presentation that you're given. You're an actor. I mean, you
Yeah.
can change people's perspective depending on what your character is. And you could do that in those red areas probably if you did it right, but they don't even fucking waste their time.
Exactly. I mean, what you would need is someone, either male or female, doesn't matter, who had an evangelical tinge to them, who could preach, which Obama did so well, for example.
Yeah.
They're used to that cadence. They're used to that kind of thing. And if you have a charismatic person, you can override their prejudice on Democrat or Republican, quite frankly. Basically, what you need to do is what the Russians did with Trump. You find an asset and you build him up, build him up, build him up, build him up over the years, and then suddenly you've got this great asset who is giving you everything you want.
Right. Right. Exactly. And the Democrats. This is where the problem with the Democrats come in. This David Hogg wants to shake things up. They don't want that. They want to push him out.
No.
They want to shut him down. What I don't understand is the Democrats doing business as usual with the establishment. They lost on November 5th. Everybody was surprised, including them. And now what they want to do is just keep doing it the way they've done it. I've had a rule of thumb growing up is if I do something over and over again and it doesn't work, I fucking try something different. No matter how crazy it seems, I'll try something different. And this is where the problem is with the Democrats right now. You have the younger crowd wanting to fight and do what they need to do. Old people just saying, "Nah, let's just leave it the way it is. It'll be fine."
Well, this was go. Let's go back in our youth and my youth, which was a little further back than yours. You don't probably remember too much about Vietnam, but when the protests started there, Democrat, Republican, it didn't matter. We were invested there, and the Democratic establishment pretty much just as much as the Republican, because quite frankly, the Democrats um, were the interventionists there, the Johnson
Right.
administration. I mean, you could say, okay, Eisenhower sent in some advisors and so forth, but it was a deliberate act to send in troops by the Johnson administration. And then, of course, the Republicans became even more hawkish about it. But it was both of them. But it was the college students, the bohemians, the beatniks, all of that group who finally stood up and said, no, this is not good. We're sending these young men and women off to be slaughtered for no good reason. And that caught on, and the war was ended, and the draft was ended, and things changed to a degree. Same thing with civil rights, which was, I mean, there was some white input there, but mostly it was black people saying this ends now, and if we have to put our blood, sweat, and tears into it, we will. And they won it. It was not a white initiative. It was a black initiative. It was them taking their power. And now we have Trump and his fellow travelers wanting to roll back all of that. It's time to
Right.
get in the streets again, and it can be done. We've seen it done. We just need to get our asses out there and do it. And that means changing our party leadership along the way. That's what we'll do.
Yeah, I think we do have to change party leadership because it's just outdated and old. And you make a good point with the 60s with civil rights and even the people protesting against the war. These were smaller groups. They weren't all the Democrats or all the Republicans or all the white people. These people picked up, they hit the streets, and they fought and they kept fighting. And it goes to show that something can be done. It can be fixed.
Yes, and that's the precedent we should look at. I just have to throw this in because it occurred to me before we started talking today. Trump came up, or somebody came up with this MAGA thing, Make America Great Again. And people were under the assumption that what they were talking about was like the 1950s. Okay, that's
Right,
what they were
right,
shooting at us, their MAGA thing. But really, they were looking at the 1850s. They want to roll back every social bit of social progress that has come along since the Civil War. They want to essentially re-enslave minorities and women. They want, and
absolutely.
nobody but a native-born white male would have any rights under what they're trying to do here, and that is the simple truth. And if you don't realize that, then you are asleep and you need to wake up now because that's what they're going for. Right now, I mean, they chose Hispanics because they were a vulnerable group, just like Hitler chose the Jews because they were a vulnerable group. Easy to demonize. And that's what they've done. But that's just the beginning. They're also going to go after LGBT people. They'll probably be next. They'll start disappearing. They'll start being deported to these what are really extermination camps, I think, not prisons. Of course, quite frankly, you can only put so many people in a prison before it becomes
Yeah.
unviable. You've got to make room. Guess what's happening really at those places? What's happening really? Think about it.
Yeah, you make a good point. What's really happening? I mean, we see what happened down in, over in New Jersey with this arrest of the mayor and now
Mm-hmm.
a member of Congress outside that Newark, New Jersey ICE detention building. And I heard them talking about it. Oh, we're really proud of this, and we do this and we do that. Well, why is it that when these representatives and the mayor came to get their oversight, which they had fully the ability to do, you don't even have to give a heads up if you're in
No.
Congress. You can just walk in and check it. They come to the door and they say no, and they say no, and then they say, well, they should have just made an appointment. Sorry, that's not the fucking way it goes. And if you have to make an appointment to get into that detention thing, what is going on when we can't have oversight? And
Mhm.
and and therein lies the problem. I think when this is all said and done, we're going to find out some horrific things that were happening.
Oh, absolutely. It's like the black sites that George W. Bush and his ilk put together to torture captives during the Iraq War and
Right.
Afghanistan. The moment we found out that was going on and who was doing it, they should have been shut down and those people prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. That's what should have happened. They should go back and do it now. As a matter of fact, whenever the Democrats get back in power, if they should be, I would call on them to do that. Justice must be served. Justice delayed is justice denied. And we're better than that. We have to be better than that. If we're not, what's the difference between us and the Soviet Union or Russia now? There's no difference.
There is no difference, and I think that we are starting to see some people wake up to what's going on. Not enough of the Republicans are waking up. I'm convinced that uh, up until the time we have a economic or humanitarian catastrophe, these people just will not wake up. And there may be some that still want to fight this, but uh, I do see a trend going away from the Republicans. People who are now getting kicked in the ass, going, "Wow, that's not what I paid for." Uh, Finally, some people are waking up. It's just a matter of how many. We look at the polls and they say, economically speaking, 65% of the people don't like what Donald Trump is doing. That's significant if that
Mhm.
poll is true. And it will keep trending that way because it's not going to get better
Mhm.
the way it's going. It's going to
No.
get worse.
Well, people, you go to the grocery store. It's easy to see that prices are still up, actually a bit up from what they were. It's
Right.
difficult for me to walk into the grocery store and walk out without having spent about $150.
Yeah.
And 6 years ago, that was probably half that.
Yeah.
So yeah, the inflation is still there. Nothing's been done there. And now they're going to make us pay more in taxes. Not rich people. Rich people get a huge tax cut. I think I saw on the an analysis of the bill that just passed the House. I would pay an extra $700 this year. Okay, that's I can absorb that. But for
Yeah.
someone making 17,000 or less would pay $1,000 more, which I pointed out would be, in comparison, huge, huge. Even if you're making 20 or 25, an extra $1,000 that has to come out of your pocket is a big deal. So
Well, well, you
go
make a
ahead.
good point. You say, maybe prices that are going up
Mhm.
may go up an extra $700 for
Mhm.
you, maybe similar to me. And you point out that, you and I could probably absorb that. We wouldn't like it, but we could probably absorb that. My question is, why do we have to absorb it? He keeps bragging about how much taxes he's brought down. And the only and the Trump-a-fox will say, yeah, he's bringing down taxes. I'm paying less in taxes. No, bitch. If you were
No,
still crowing about that 2017 taxes, that tax cut, your tax cut is
Mhm.
fucking gone.
Long ago.
It's over.
Yeah,
So
it
you
went up.
better wake
It
up
went
and
up.
find out which.
They never understood that the tax cuts on the wealthy and corporations stayed in place, but
Right.
the tax cuts for people like you and me and below, they went up every 2 years for 10 years. So
Yeah.
any tax increase from 2017 until now is all on Trump. It was the Trump tax bill. There were no tax increases enacted by Congress or the Biden administration while Biden was in office. None. They were all Trump tax increases.
But they were,
Now,
yeah, but still people believe, well, Joe Biden's in office now, so it must be Joe Biden. These people are so stupid, they don't even understand how this stuff works.
no.
You've got to look at the facts. And then when you state the facts to them, no, this is Donald Trump's taxes that he implemented in 2017, they'll say something like, oh, no, that's not true. Joe Biden was in office. I mean, this is how unsophisticated and ignorant some fucking people are.
Well, this is it. They think of the president like a king, that he could wave a wand, but Congress controls the money or has. I mean, with some of the executive orders and stuff he's trying to put out there, which really have no force of law. They don't. They either have to be picked up by Congress or something like that. I mean, he can fire people in the executive branch and that sort of thing, sure. But there's nothing substantive he can do unless the courts and Congress allow him to do it. That's why we have three equal branches of government. They're trying to change that. They're trying to make sure, they're trying to give Trump control over courts and over Congress to a degree. I've even heard Trump say that, well, if one party is being obstructionist, we need to do something about that party. I mean, this tells you what he's thinking. He wants to be a dictator. He wants to be like the Saudi prince or Erdogan or Kim Jong Un, where his word is law and everybody goose steps for him and sig heils him and all of that stuff. And he revels in it. It's not about money or anything. It's about being the adulation enforced upon the populace.
It's funny that he would complain about people that were obstructionists because Republicans were obstructionists throughout the whole Obama terms, both
And
terms,
Biden, and Biden.
and at least the 2 to 4 years with Biden. That's
Right.
all they were as obstructionists. When they
Mhm.
had control of the House, they got nothing done. Surprise, they got control of the House again, and they've got very little done, save for passing this recent bill. Um, I think some of these Republicans are smart enough to know that what they just did, even if it doesn't pass, the fact that they voted to cut Medicaid, Medicare, SNAP, and all this other stuff, I think that's going to come up in the next election in 2026. I think Democrats, if they're smart, they're going to be mentioning that. And by that time, maybe they'll be feeling some of the pinch from this happening. In my mind, it's always been like political suicide. You vote for this, there's no coming back from that. And that'd be the point where I thought they'd say, okay, Trump, enough, fucking enough. But they keep being so complicit with what he does. And I don't understand the ultimate fear of Donald Trump. I mean, this guy is a fucking goofball. He can't keep his word straight. He is definitely cognitively diminished, but they're still following. How fucking cowardly is that?
Well, it's because they know he can get them primary. I'll give you an example here. We have our local representative. She and her husband and her had a company that sold. It was a reform, the compounding pharmacy that sold drugs to the VA, for example, and they claimed that they were using quality drugs. They're actually importing from China, changing the labels and selling them to the VA. He went to prison. She got elected to Congress.
Yeah.
So Trump, I thought surely to goodness, she won't last. But no, Trump gave her a big buildup, called her a warrior, so forth, and then did one for her son. So not only is she our representative to Washington, her son is now our state representative. So he packs power in these Republican districts. His endorsement can make or break a candidate for sure. Now, that doesn't mean a Democrat would go in because this is a Republican district. 84% vote Republican if they vote. But this is the kind of power he wields to make or break. If then the Republicans will put money in, or really the Republican oligarchs will put money in. The guy standing behind him at the inauguration, all of those billionaires, they elected Trump with their money, period.
Yeah, and they should be held accountable when this is all said and done. There's going to be a lot of blame to be spread around, and those oligarchs uh, should need to be held accountable. I mean, we're seeing some big companies and wealthy people being held accountable now. All I keep hearing about is Target, how they're struggling, how they've lost 3 or 4% of their profits, largely due to boycotts with this whole DEI thing. And the thing about it is these people are so bought into the shit that Donald Trump is trolling out that here's Target. They're losing money, maybe 4% over the last quarter, which is significant. They took the CEO and they cut his salary because of the loss in profits, and they're still standing by the no DEI thing. If you
Yeah.
know that's the thing that's fucking you up, why do you stand by it? It's just like the Republicans giving away their elections just to stand by Donald Trump. That is a fucking sickness.
Well, to me, it tells me they have incompetent leadership because if your target, especially in areas like where I live, where your direct competition is Walmart,
Yeah.
you must realize that the people shopping at Target have more disposable income and they probably tend a little bit more liberal um, because they are willing to pay a little bit more to get something better. Whether it's better or not, I don't know, but in their estimation, it is. What they're really paying for, I believe, is from an elite standpoint, saying, I don't have to rub shoulders with the people who shop at Walmart. Quite frankly, I do think that's a big part of it. So, and they are in favor of DEI, which everyone should be if they
Yeah.
realize what it is. If you're not a white supremacist, a racist, a moron, you've got to be in favor of DEI. Anybody who isn't just doesn't understand it. It does not require incompetent people to be hired. It just means that everybody has to be considered, and that their qualifications have to be considered, and they can't be not hired because of race and so forth. But there are no quotas involved with DEI or anything like that. It's just leveling the playing field and trying to say, well, why don't we have any black employees when there are plenty of qualified black people out there? That's all it's saying. It's saying we have a problem. Let's address that. That's what DEI is, period. So if Target wants to survive, at least in areas like this one, they better get their shit together.
Well, DEI stands for diversity, equity,
Inclusion, yeah,
yeah,
and equity and inclusion.
right. Which
Mhm.
one of those words is such a bad word? It's not identifying black or white. It could be anybody. It could be male or
Sure.
female. It could be gay or straight. It could be black or white. It could be anything. Since when do those words have any negative connotation in this country? None of them do. We should
They
all
didn't.
aspire to that.
They didn't. But it comes back to white privilege. You say that word, and white people of certain stripe lose their mind, and they start screaming, "I never got anything extra. I didn't have any privilege." All white privilege means is that you didn't have to struggle because you weren't white.
Right.
Okay, and
Or
we know
struggle as
that's
much.
right, exactly. And we know that's the case. So that's simply, if you're white, you have white privilege because you weren't looked down on because you were black or brown or female or whatever. Okay. That's all it means.
Well, it's funny when you ever hear somebody Republican, racist, white supremacist. I didn't have white privilege. I worked all my life. Well, then you obviously weren't educated either because you don't even understand what white privilege is.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean you didn't have to work. It doesn't mean that you're a dumbass that couldn't get out of your own fucking way. But you do have a certain amount of privilege. I know my wife, when she worked in customer service, and she worked with a crowd of people uh, that was pretty diverse, black, white, all different colors. And you would get some asshole white guy come up to the counter and just be hard to deal with. Now, keep in mind, my wife is pasty white like me too,
Mhm.
and um, when that person would walk away, she'd turn around and he goes, "That's white privilege." And everybody thought it was
Mhm.
funny. A white person was pointing out white privilege, but it isn't hard to point out because it's so
Mhm.
prevalent today. Everybody thinks they're special. Everybody thinks they need special treatment, and they're almost always these white hooniac backwoods motherfuckers.
Yeah, and if you can go into a store and walk around, let's say it's a high-end clothing store and walk around and nobody follows you, that's white privilege. If you're
Oh
black
yeah.
and you do that and someone follows you, that's what I'm talking about. If you're pulled over driving while black, that means that, and you aren't because you're white, that's white privilege.
Well, that's exactly right. I can go to parts of this town, the Twin Cities, and as an old white guy driving an SUV, I could drive through that town maybe 5 miles over the speed limit, and they won't even talk to me. It's
Right.
not a problem. He's an old white guy. You get a young black man or black woman going through that same part of town driving at the speed limit. They will get pulled over and they will want to run them through the gamut of things because they think they might be guilty because they're black. That is the essence of what white privilege is. And anybody that says it isn't there, they're fucking lying. I mean,
Yeah.
even to the point where if you've got kids of any color driving through certain parts of town, uh, uh, they're going to get jumped on because people are making judgments about those people, whether they be young, whether they be black, whatever. Whether they got the wrong fucking bumper sticker on, who knows? There is that kind of preference going on in this country, whether it be a blue state or a red state, and to suggest it's not happening or that you don't have white privilege, you just don't understand what the fucking concept means.
Well, this is an example. You know, you talk about driving, but let me put it this way: if there's a black man walking down the sidewalk in Morningside in over by Edina at 8 p.m., do you think he's going to attract some attention?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a
In a blue
high-end
state.
white suburb. That's what I'm saying. You know, that would happen. A corollary was that where we worked, the station we worked for, you weren't at the station. You were at the traffic management center, of course. But I had to drive in every morning at 4 a.m. or before 4 a.m. Through what was essentially a black ghetto
Yeah.
where there was high crime and drugs and so forth. And the cops would follow me, and every time they changed the shift guys, they would follow me into the parking lot, wondering what a white guy's doing in this neighborhood at this time of morning. They thought A, prostitution, or B, drugs, or vice versa. I was suspect because I was out of place, you know.
Right. Right.
And I would have to point out, I work here. Oh, are you a janitor? No, I work at the radio station. What radio station? The one whose call letters are above the door, you know. But that happened to me like five, six, seven, 8 times over the years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You would get that in Minneapolis. I had an office downtown, and if you're a white guy driving in the wrong part of town, people would eye you. And it wasn't the black people that did it; it was
No.
the cops.
Yeah.
Oh, he must be here buying drugs or trying to pick up girls or whatever. And that wasn't the case. You just happened to be driving through that area. So this kind of thing happens all the time, even in blue states, and it is a huge issue. And unless you're black, you really don't realize it. I mean, I know black families that literally have to sit down, talk to their sons who are just starting driving to tell them the rules of being black on the roadway. You
Mhm.
don't do this, you don't do that. If this happens, you got to do this. It is that bad. I mean, when you've got things in Minnesota, a blue state, where a young black man gets killed by a cop because he may have reacted wrong,
Yeah.
you got to be terrified as a parent. Sending your kids out in the car for the first time. It's supposed to be fun. It's exciting. They may get a car crash. When parents send their black children out in their cars, it's a life and death situation, and it doesn't even have to do with a car crash.
Right. And the other thing that goes on too, because I mentioned the drugs and prostitution in this neighborhood, which was a black neighborhood, people with white privilege would think, well, yeah, of course they're criminals. That's it. No. See, this is what happens, but this is white privilege. You can live anywhere you want. But in Minneapolis, if you were black, you were redlined into that section of town for a
Right.
long, long time. And consequently, so was crime. The cops, many of whom were on the take, as long as you stay in North Minneapolis, we're cool. And I get paid, we're cool. So that's where the drugs were. That's where the prostitution was. It was redlined into those places as well. And with the new immigrants came to town, that's where they put them as well.
Well, it's funny about North Minneapolis too, because if you go way back in time in like the 20s or 30s,
Jewish.
all it was all Jewish, and all the houses were huge and beautiful.
Yeah. Hmm.
I mean, they've now since deteriorated, but it went through from kind of a nicer part of town and a strictly Jewish part of town to the black community and other minorities, and it's just changed over completely. I know people, I don't, they're gone now, but would tell me about living on the north side and how nice it was and all that stuff. And since that time, it's become, like you say, a ghetto to a large degree.
Right. And it's very hard for people to get out of that ghetto to this day. Because I worked with a lady who had a house there, and she and her husband finally moved to a predominantly white suburb to protect their son, who was gangs were trying to recruit him, and the cops were always pulling him over. So if they wanted a live son, they had to move. They did, and then they had to rent that house in North Minneapolis, and it was constantly getting trashed and so forth. So they were essentially, in an economic bind because they had to live somewhere where their son would be safe, but at the same time, their property was losing value all the time in North Minneapolis, and they couldn't sell it because nobody wanted to buy it.
Yeah, exactly. I want to talk about something, we both work kind of in education and the absolute hatred that the Republicans have for education. And then they're doing something now that I thought they learned a lesson because they went a bridge too far given the circumstances, but now Trump is fucking with them again. I'm talking about Harvard.
Yeah.
How they were, trying to pressure Harvard to stop DEI type stuff. And then they came out, Donald Trump came out yesterday, the day before, and said, we're dictating that you can't bring in any more foreign students. And in fact, the 20% of the students you have that are foreign, they need to transfer. Now, the whole reason for this is because, like stormtroopers, Donald Trump's administration went to and say, we want all the disciplinary paperwork on all your foreign students, tell
Mhm.
on them. And so we can see and have a good reason to deport them. And Harvard said, fuck yourself. And
Yeah.
so Donald Trump came out with this, well, you got to get rid of your foreign or international students, and you can't bring any more in. Well, they took it to court, and I woke up this morning and they said, yeah, you can't fucking do that. And now Harvard is looking at suing the Trump administration. If you're going to pick on a college, why would you pick on the college where some of the most wealthy people in our country today are alumnus of? Most of the powerful people and strong people. That just shows how silly and stupid he is. He's going up against people that have a lot of power and a lot of money, and they're not going to like him coming in and ruining their history, their legacy, with Yale or with Harvard, probably Yale ultimately too. But um, why does he pick a fight like this that he knows he's going to fucking lose?
Because he's vindictive. He couldn't get into Harvard no matter how much money his father would pay them because he was an idiot and everybody knew it. His son couldn't get into Harvard either. He was
Right.
denied admission. It's purely vindictive on his part. That's all it is. There's nothing beyond that. Purely vindictive.
Yeah, so he's going to mount this fight. He's going to lose, and you would think after all that's gone on, all these executive orders and all these commands, this guy's lost 300 fucking court cases over and
Yeah.
over and over and over again. Um, I give him credit. He's determined. He'll get his ass kicked every goddamn day, and he will just do it over and over again. That's either a sign of determination, or as we've heard before, if you do something over and over again expecting a different outcome, you're fucking nuts. You're goofy. And he is really at that point where he's looking silly every time he opens his mouth. And I got to believe there's some people on the Republican side even questioning his sanity or his mental durability. It's slipping fast.
Yeah, well, it's chip away, chip away, chip away. It's not necessarily doing things over and over again. It's chip, chip, chip.
Well,
And
that's true.
he's been kind of successful in doing that. I mean, thanks to Mitch McConnell, he was able to get the court pack to agree with conservatives, and yet we have Amy Coney Barrett now seeming to push back on that a little bit. That I mean, she recused herself in a vote about religious schools and so forth, which took a great deal of courage on her part. And the reason, of
Absolutely.
course, I mean, she should have, but Clarence Thomas and others should have recused themselves on many votes that they have chosen not to do. She was, I will never agree with her on many things, her Roe vote, for example, but at the same time, I do have more respect because she did recuse herself there when she probably would not have had to do that. So props to her for that and for a couple of other votes and for also during some debates, she has stood up for some of the liberal justices against the Solicitor General and his smarmy attitude. So yeah, I'm encouraged there. We did lose one where apparently Trump can dump any agency head that he wants to, except for the Federal Reserve. They said no, you can't do that because it's a semi-private organization. So that's a victory.
Yeah, who had on their bingo card that Amy Coney Barrett would be the reasonably minded one on the court, save for the Democrats? I never expected that. This woman is a highly religious person. She's essentially part of a cult. She's very religious right. But apparently she's got a conscience, unlike most of the people on the court on the Republican side. She's trying to do the right thing to the best of her ability. She has some weird thoughts, certainly, but
Well, this is the thing that's always struck me with the Supreme Court. They keep saying that they're not ideologically driven. They really maintain that. It's very important for them for you to believe that. But when you get a 5-4 vote, it's always ideological. It's always
always,
ideological.
yeah,
If
yeah.
you get
When
a
they say,
nine to nothing or 7-2 or something like that, maybe not. Those two are probably ideologically driven because it's usually Alito and Thomas. But if it's 5-4, it's always ideological. Usually, I mean,
well,
I'm not going to say always, but it's a good indication.
and the thing is, with the Supreme Court, it should not be
No.
ideological. It should be what the law says. The law is pretty cut and dried. And what we find with the Supreme Court justices is the same thing we find with the Congress, is they have the rules. Now, how can I pervert those rules? How can I change those rules or find loopholes to get what I want? And that's what we have on the Supreme Court, and that's why the Supreme Court is failing. Stick to the rule of law. Whether you like that answer or not, you're a Supreme Court justice, and you've got to stick to the law. if you don't want the Supreme Court to be ideological, then why do you have people that are identified as conservative and liberal on the court?
Exactly. Exactly. That could be because who appoints them, but quite frequently we have people like David Souter's a good example, who was appointed by, I believe, Reagan or Nixon. I think it was Reagan.
Right.
Everyone assumed that he would be a reliable conservative vote. He turned out to be actually liberal on most things. So
Yeah.
there's no gauging. The liberal justice is usually, in my mind at least, are fair-minded and they look at the law. The conservative justice is in large part that we have now, and Coney Barrett may be an exception, are originalists who seem to think that all the amendments are a waste of time and they should all be gotten rid of and just go back to the Constitution as written. But I have to point out the Bill of Rights is nothing but amendments. So if you want to go back to the original, you don't have the right to bear arms. You don't have free speech. None of those first amendments that we call the Bill of Rights would be there. I think it was Madison who didn't want them included. He didn't want the Constitution to be able to be amended. He wanted it rock solid. But that does not work. It does not work. And then we had the 14th or 15th, which says just because it's not in here doesn't mean it can't be. So that's the.
Well, it's
I,
ironic. It's ironic that somebody would have said that they want the Constitution not to be able to be amended when
mhm.
Thomas Jefferson, and I have to paraphrase him because I don't know the exact thing, said in order to maintain a democracy, you have to have a revolution every 20 years. That
Yeah.
may not be exactly how he said it, but I think he made a good point that after, with each generation, things change,
Mhm.
attitudes change, things that are norms, things that are accepted change. And I have to believe even the forefathers knew that what's going on now in 1776 is probably going to be different in 1876. And that ability to change things. I always get a kick out of the people who claim to be originalist. They're
Mhm.
they're originalist up until the time when that doesn't work for them.
Right.
You know, it's like they want to talk about the Second Amendment and go, well, this actually means that, or this means that, or when they talk about Roe v. Wade, they say there is no mention of abortion in the Constitution. But when it comes to due process, it's very specifically laid out in the 14th Amendment that there
Yeah.
needs to be due process. And they say, well, that's only for citizens. No, that's not what it
Person.
says, Mr.
It says
Originalist.
it says person. Yeah. Quite simply, and we know what a person is. That's pretty clear from the rest of the Constitution that a person is anybody, not a citizen. Yeah, I was not right with the amendment. I think it's the eighth or ninth amendment that says just because it isn't in there, but somebody could look it up and tell me where I'm wrong. Um, but you're right. It's either a living document or it isn't. And quite frankly, Clarence Thomas wouldn't be on the court if we were dealing with the original um, Constitution, because he would not be a citizen. He could not be a justice. He could not vote. So he cannot be an originalist. Well, he's a
Right.
fraud.
Right. Well, yeah, he certainly is a fraud, and he proves it every day. Do you expect Alito and Thomas to retire in the next couple of years, so the Republicans can have the power to replace them? I'm thinking they will. I mean, they're old, they're fucked up, and just because they retire doesn't mean we're going to get somebody better. But we can't get somebody worse.
Does anyone ever choose to give up power? Well, some do. I mean, Kennedy did. I think he was forced out, quite frankly. I think he was blackmailed and they were going to go after his son if they didn't, because
Right.
he
I
did
agree.
some skullduggery with, because he worked for Deutsche Bank. I think he was forced out. And I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg should have retired.
Yeah.
Um, there are many others, but giving it up seems to be very hard. Uh, I don't have faith in either one of those willing to give up power. They'll either die or uh, they get too many perks from it. If they're not a justice anymore, the perks dry up. They're not getting the free weekends. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I tell you what, after the midterms, I bet the Republicans start pressuring the fuck out of them. Be,
That's possible.
because of what are they in their 70s, late 70s?
Yeah, something
Uh,
like that.
and if they live through 2028 and the Democrats win the presidency, we're going to get two liberal judges in there, and the Republicans aren't just aren't going to risk that. They may, these guys may want to hold on to power until they croak, but I'll guarantee you the Republicans are going to be pressuring them to resign so they can put two 40-year-old conservatives in there.
Well, the Democrats keep bringing bro pillows to a knife fight. They should have impeached Thomas at least when
Yeah,
they had the chance. While Biden was still in office, they should have impeached Thomas because he was so tied up into the January 6th insurrection that he would have been a fairly easy kill, I think. I mean, professional, not literal.
right.
Um, they should have impeached him because for high crimes and misdemeanors, he certainly would have been, and Biden could have replaced him with a reliable liberal. You know that
Well,
you've got to start fighting fire with fire. That's why I say we need a new Democratic leadership that is not. I mean, right now they can have as many hearings as they want. They can call these secretaries in as many times as they want, insult them to their face, like they did with Rubio, which they should have done, like they did with Linda McMahon, which they should have done, like they did with Buttigieg. I mean, with Hegseth. You know, they can
right.
humiliate these people to a degree, but the people who they need to, that's not doing anything. It maybe makes them feel good, but it's accomplishing nothing. Zero. It's just making them feel better, making them look like they're doing something. You got to fight them in the trenches, inch for inch. That's what you got to do. And I think Hegseth and AOC and some of the holdovers like Bernie and Elizabeth Warren are willing to do that. These other people are just there to feather their nest and get their contributions from lobbyists and their seats on boards and all of that stuff. I'm sorry, we don't need you. We don't need people like you. We need people that are willing to fight, or we lose everything.
Well, that's a good point. That's what we've seen out of the Democrats since Donald Trump's uh, entrance into to politics. They do what they do as much as they feel comfortable with. They don't push back. They put Merrick Garland in position as AG. And as I've said before, I don't have any qualms about them picking Merrick Garland to be the Attorney General. At the time, it seemed like a good choice. But
Yeah.
once you get a year into it and he's done nothing, don't you fire
Replace
him?
him. Yeah.
Get somebody in there to fucking do it. Biden did not do that. They're fucking lazy, is what they are. They don't want to fight. I don't even know if it's because they're cowards. They're just lazy. They just want to go along to get along. I got my power. I got my money. Let's not ruffle too many feathers because everything's going pretty good for me right now. And now we find ourselves in a position where everything's going to hell. And now they're outraged. Well, you shouldn't be outraged. You should have been fighting from the fucking beginning.
Well, this is the thing too. I mean, I think they were counting on, okay, we got a bad economy and we made it better. Okay, we
Right.
made it better. The stock market's up, but that means nothing to most people. I mean, the people in the county where I live, uh, people like me who have investments in the stock market through a 401k or whatever it may be. We pay attention to the stock market. These people don't have stocks. They don't have that kind of plan.
Right.
They're looking at the grocery store. They're looking at what they're paying for eggs and milk and bread and so forth, right? And that
Right.
all went up. And it went up because inflation went up after COVID or during COVID, whatever. But Biden was able to get it down. But people were still in pain, but they didn't address that. They were, oh, look what we did. We did great. We did great. No, you got to point out the truth and say, okay, we got to get this down. We got to get this. We got to do this. You got to speak the truth. You can't just say, rest on your laurels and so forth. And I think that's what so many of them did, really.
Well, and, we see the division. in the Republicans up until the time Donald Trump starts making threats, and then they come together, like with the bill in the House. Um, but the Democrats are truly divided too. We have the
Hmm.
situation where David Hogg is the vice chair of the DNC. It's kind of a
Ceremonial role.
ceremonial position. Yeah. But now he's trying to stir some things up. He's a young guy. He wants to primary some of the easy people uh, that have an easy time getting elected but do nothing at all. Of course, the establishment doesn't like that. Don't fucking shake things up. But don't you think when this all comes down to it, Donald Trump can't last. The Republicans and MAGA can't last. It's going to crash. It's going to be horrible. It's going to be catastrophic. But when that happens, don't you think we also need to see a dramatic change with the Democrats? I
We
mean, the
do.
way they do business and who are the leaders is just got to fucking change because nobody's serving this country. They're all serving themselves.
We need to get back to the basics, and that means getting back to the Johnson/Roosevelt way of doing things, where you do things for the lower half of the working people, those who don't have those kind of funds. They're working as contract employees now. They're not getting benefits. Their health care is through Medicaid or whatever, if they have any. And you need to try to raise those people up. And when they see that, I mean, that's what happened with Roosevelt. There were no liberals in this country per se before Roosevelt. No, if they were Democrat or Republican, Democrats were mostly racist in the South, quite frankly. There are a few up north, but everything changed because of the social programs of Roosevelt and then later of Johnson. We needed to do that with Biden. We did it somewhat, but you got to have two terms to do that, and you got to hold the House and Senate. Because this is what's happened. We had Obama go in, and his first tour, he did a lot of great stuff. Then people didn't do enough, I guess, or it didn't reach far enough down so that they gave the House to the Republicans and nothing was done for the next 4 years except through executive orders. Okay? And he couldn't get judges in place and all of that because they screwed him by giving the House to the Republicans. Biden, same thing. He gets a couple of years to get shit done. He gets a lot done. They give the House back to the Republicans. Nothing gets done. You got to hold the House and Senate. And how you do that is you got to give people something that is dramatic. If you have to send them a $5,000 check, send them a damn $5,000 check, but get it done, get their attention.
Right, exactly. And the thing about it is that the Democrats don't do that. They get power and they don't codify Roe v. Wade and they don't do all the things they have to do. I mean, that's one of the things that I have a problem with Obama. While he was a great president and he did all the great things, and we were proud to live in this country when he was president, he wasn't as aggressive as he should have been as a president. Maybe it's because he was young and because he didn't understand all that he was able to do. And the same with Joe Biden. Joe Biden was aggressive about getting things done the first 2 years, but after that, when the Republicans got control of the House, nothing fucking happened. Not much happened. I mean, he did as good a job as he possibly can do um, in the 2 years where he had some power. But now, I got to tell you, this book that came out by I've been disgusted by Jake Tapper since the debate.
Sure.
Jake Tapper is nothing more than a shill trying to enrich
Mm-hmm.
himself.
He's an
The idea that
opportunist.
Yeah, the idea that he's sitting up there trying to tell us he's a journalist, that motherfucker's not a journalist. Somebody pointed out on the show the other day, it's kind of like the guy from Watergate who writes a book. They know all this terrible stuff while it's going on, but they set it aside so they can write a book later and make money. If Joe Biden was in that bad of conditions, as a journalist, wouldn't you fucking mention that? Wouldn't that
Should
be a
have.
top story right now? But you
Yeah.
choose not to. You put the country in danger if what he's saying is true, just so I can make a buck later. As far as I'm concerned, Jake Tapper has no fucking credibility. Either way, whether he's right or wrong about it, he fucked us.
Yeah. I saw Joe Biden through his, I watched, a lot of statements and so forth on TV. He did not do well in the debate, but every other public appearance he had, granted it was written for him, but he spoke it. He showed up. He looked very vigorous. He rode his bicycle. He did all that shit. He made it up and down the stairs for the most part, as much well as Trump did. And he was never giving these rambling speeches that went nowhere with incoherent bullshit in them. So he was always better than Trump is now, always.
Well,
So,
and that's an excellent point. You're railing on a guy who's now a private citizen, now a
right.
guy that has cancer that could be terminal. You're railing on him like that's a top news story, but you completely ignore the ridiculousness that is Donald Trump and the crazy shit he says. If you're a true journalist, let's deal with the problem at hand, the problem with the sitting president doing the crazy, stupid things, but they're just doing what they've always done. They give him a pass and go after somebody else.
I'll
It's
give
very
you
frustrating.
exactly. Well, I would have to say that a complicit press was what got Donald Trump reelected. And
Yeah,
it's what is
I agree.
keeping any sort of approval rating for him above 10%. For example, he's out there almost every day saying prices are down, eggs are
Yeah,
cheap, eggs are too cheap, gas is $1.98. As I mentioned, I drove from here in Tennessee to Illinois over the last few days. I never paid less than $3.15 for gas.
right.
Now here at home, with a discount I get for shopping at Food City, I get 30 cents off per gallon when I fill up, or 45 sometimes. So I'm paying around 250, something like that, with that discount. But it's Tennessee's one of the cheapest in the nation, and I think 289 for the regular, yeah,
Yeah,
right now. But the premium's still like 305, 315, something like that. But it was that, I went through 6 states and it was over $3 in every friggin' one of them. You can say,
yeah.
okay, well, you were near the freeway in most cases, and that's true. It's a little more expensive there. It was still over $3. So he's flat out lying by a dollar. There's nowhere in the United States it's $1.98. Every news media everywhere should be saying he's lying. We have his spokesperson just the other day. She was called out about the bill, saying it adds $3.5 trillion to the deficit. She says, no, according to the Council of Economic Advisors, which is the people that he picked to tell him what he wanted to hear, that
Right.
it'll only add, that it will actually reduce the deficit by 1.5 trillion. That is a flat out lie. It's a straight up lie. And if Lester Holt doesn't say that on the news, then he is not doing his job. This even Fox News should be pointing out that that is a blatant lie. If you're claiming to be news, which Fox doesn't anymore, by the way, they claim to be entertainment. But any news outlet that claims to be news should be doing that. They should be calling out these lies. And some people say that's why he lies so much, because they just get overwhelmed. They can't cover them all. And that may be true. But that's once again the chip away, chip away, chip away. And that's why it is so easy to run as a candidate like Trump, because all you have to do is lie. Day one, I'll end the war in the Ukraine. Day one, the prices will come down.
Well,
All lies.
we're seeing what was once a paragon of journalism in 60 Minutes and CBS. Um, they just flat out said to 60 Minutes, you're going to have to pare this back a little bit because we're trying to do a deal with a
Yeah,
merger and you can't beat up Donald Trump as much. Well, that just ruins any credibility for 60
yeah,
Minutes, which has had credibility for decades.
yeah.
Then the head of the news department of CBS, the head of the news department says, fuck it, I can't do this anymore.
I
We're going
quit.
two different directions and I quit. You've got ABC caving into a lawsuit that they would have easily won, but they
Yeah.
pay Donald Trump off. We can't trust our networks anymore. And they're
Mhm.
blatant about it. They just step out and say, yeah, we got to be buddies with Donald Trump, so we're just going to do what we have to do to get along. There really is no mass media source, mainstream media source, where we can trust them to give us the full truth. We've got CNN, which is owned by an oligarch, and we got Jake Tapper and all the rest there. MSNBC, they're maybe a little better than CNN, but they don't necessarily lie. They just don't tell you everything
Mhm.
that could cause problems. There really is no place in mainstream media to get legitimate, truthful news.
The NPR and National Public Radio are a little better.
But
They
they're a little caught up in it too because they got pressure.
well, yeah, that the worst thing that Trump could have done was defund them, because if
Right.
they're not getting government money, if they have to depend and a lot of people say, well, public radio's dead. Then that's not true. You know where we
No.
worked, we got
Yeah.
almost no government funds from National
Right.
Public Radio. We got
Right.
what they called an equipment grant. I think it was every 2 years we got about 15 grand. And you know how far
Right.
that goes with running a radio station. That's not even one salary. Okay.
No. No.
It was to replace the recorders or the digital editor, or, buy new light bulbs or something like that. We existed because we had a contract with the state to provide traffic information, which you did. And the rest, we told people, if you want to hear our programming, you got to pony up. And they did, because they loved what we did.
Right.
And they will not be affected. They won't get that equipment grant. Would be the only thing that they will lose. They will be just fine. Many of the other public radio outlets across the country are in the same boat. They count on listener contributions, which was what it was meant to be from the beginning, right?
Right.
So I think they'll be okay if they get back to those roots. Quality programming is what it's all about. Everybody's saying, well, Netflix stepped up and now we're going to have Sesame Street. Well, okay, let's see how long that lasts before you have to pay for it. In the beginning, maybe not. But I think the way it's shaping up is new stuff will be by subscription, and the old stuff you'll still be able to get a hold of, something like that. The thing is, uh, we have to be able to fight back. And it starts with standing up. It starts with the news media saying, drawing a line in the sand and saying, we're either telling the truth or there's no reason for us to be here.
Right. Exactly. Well, we're coming toward the end of May, going into June, and June 14th is imminent. That happens to be Donald Trump's 79th birthday or thereabouts. Maybe he's later than that, but it's the celebration for Donald Trump's birthday. He says it's celebrating the military, but it's about
Mhm.
celebrating Donald Trump.
Sure, it is.
He's going to have this big parade talking about 6 or 7 thousand military personnel, like 150 military vehicles, 50 helicopters, a bunch of citizens, and they're going to have this parade through Washington, D.C. Now, when I first heard about that and the cost of maybe as much as $100 million, I don't know where they're getting the money from to do that, but I thought,
Now,
no way this is gonna happen. And if it does, it's not a good idea and all that stuff. I'm at a point right now where I'm saying, I hope it happens. I can't wait till it happens because we know Donald Trump will fuck up. And for me, when you do something like that in the middle of Washington, D.C., and you're not Russia or not China, that's like a big fucking target
mhm.
on him, the military, and the Capitol.
There's that. I got to throw this in real quick. Within that bill that the House just passed,
Yeah.
there's $300 million. That's what that's for. Think about that. $300 million to
Right.
provide security for Trump on his golf visits.
We're cutting Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP. We're cutting food for kids. We're cutting all this stuff, but make sure you have that 300 million so Donald Trump can golf 30% of the time he's in
Yeah.
office.
And there's a golf course 5 minutes away. If he wanted to just golf, if it was about golf, he could go and play at the course where Dwight Eisenhower played, and Kennedy, and Obama, and anybody else with a reasonable amount of dedication to their job. He's also hosting this big dinner at the White House for the major investors in his Bitcoin. And they're trying to justify it by saying that's on his personal time. Well, if it's on his personal time, that means he could be charged with violating the emoluments clause because he is doing that. He is generating money for himself using his office, using the White House, which belongs to you and me, by the way, not Trump.
Well, that's a good point. He's on his personal time. Well, then go to
Mhm.
fucking Mar-a-Lago. Do it in
Mhm.
Mar-a-Lago. But it wouldn't have as much cachet asking for hundreds of millions of dollars from people if we did it at Mar-a-Lago. It's cooler when we do it at the White House. But, you and I have worked at places. Um, I used to own a recording studio and I'd produce commercials and stuff like that. But I also worked at the radio station. Now, if I was on my own time, but using the equipment at the radio station to do something personal, that would have been wrong. I would have gotten in trouble. And the same should be said for what Donald Trump is doing, trying to use the servants and the people there and the food. I'm sure he didn't pay for any fucking food. I'm sure we paid for it. But this is what they do. Well, it's my own personal time. Sorry, that doesn't cut it. You're in our house using our food, using our people that we pay for. It's not your own time. And if it is, you're misusing it.
Exactly. I mean, he could be brought up on charges for that alone. He could be impeached for that alone. If we had, but you can't, there's no reason to do it. Number one, the House wouldn't allow it because they're
Right.
Republican led. Number two, the Senate would never convict, just like they didn't before, because we don't have a majority there. So it's pointless. But it could be done, and it could be done in retrospect, and he could be locked up. But this is the thing. It has to be. People have to try though. They have to point this out that this is a violation. Remember, we had Trump giving a speech to the very people, these same people essentially, the tech giants and all of that, saying, you people should give me $1 billion because I'm going to cut your taxes. That was a promise he gave them. They did. And not only that, people with what's the word I want? Regulatory problems. Chicken manufacturer, Pilgrim, I think it was, who was supposed to do something about salmonella. He canceled that because they gave him $1 million. And there are many, many others. There are many others that people gave him donations who had regulatory problems that were canceled as soon as he was in office. You could not only lock him up, you could lock them up, and they should be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the amount of crimes that are being committed, not only by Donald Trump, but the people around him. Some people have said when this ultimately ends, and it will end inevitably. I don't know when, the sooner the better, but when it ends, some people are suggesting we're going to have literally something comparable to Nuremberg trials back
Should
in
be.
World War II. Do you think that's conceivable? Do you think that's possible? Do you think the Democrats will be strong enough to insist on that accountability?
If we had some Democrats with guts, they would. They should. They keep the Democrats always are going, well, we need to reconcile. We can't be two camps. We got to all pull together, but that's not going to happen.
No, it can't happen.
It didn't happen with the Civil War. I mean, remember, it wasn't the Union that started the Civil War. It was the Confederates who started it, right? Because
Right.
they thought that they would be that the Union would be trying to get rid of slavery, so they went ahead and started the war and got their asses kicked, which they should have. But
Right.
this is the thing you've got to do is stay with the truth, stay in the light, and you cannot compromise with evil. If you do, you are tinged with the evil, and that's what's happened.
Well, don't you think, when Richard Nixon resigned and Gerald Ford pardoned him, the excuse was, well, we've gone through a lot with Watergate. We need to heal. We need to come together and start building back and building up and let America get back to the way it was. I think in this case, and maybe politicians will disagree with me, but after 10 years of dealing with this criminality and this corruption, if we want the country to heal, we're going to need some significant accountability. There's going to have to be punishment meted out, and they're going to have to do that if they truly want the country to to heal. Because people in this country literally believe, and for good reason, that Donald Trump and the Republicans can do whatever they want and they can get away with it. And if that stands, there will be Democrats and other Republicans that will do the same thing, and this will become nothing resembling democracy when it's all said and done. It's already hard to recognize.
It's true. If you really look at it historically, since Nixon and including Nixon's administration, the Republican Party has been a criminal enterprise.
Right.
Nixon should have been prosecuted and he should have been jailed and he should have been disgraced instead of letting him resign and then kind of become this elder statesman off to the side. Reagan should have been he should have been impeached. He should have been imprisoned for what he did with Iran Contra. That was all illegal. And that wasn't all he did, but that alone should have done it. He should have been disgraced. He should have been imprisoned. George W. Bush, for all of the everything he tries to do to smooth things over, he took us into war, got a lot of our soldiers killed, and killed a lot of civilians for no reason on trumped up evidence that was all lies. He took us into two wars that he could not pay for, destroyed the economy, drove us into a recession. He should have been impeached. He should have been imprisoned. We've let them all get off the hook. Trump has to be done. I mean, I don't care. I mean, he can be a friggin' vegetable. He can fall over tomorrow and be on life support. He needs to be impeached and he needs to be imprisoned.
Well, don't you think, you know, just take the Richard Nixon situation. Had he not been pardoned and had he been held accountable and punished, is it reasonable to think we wouldn't be where we are today with Donald Trump?
I have no doubt that that would have put the fear of God into the Republican Party to a degree. That's not to say they might not have over time come back, but I don't think you would have seen a Reagan presidency. I don't think you would have seen a George W. Bush presidency, and you certainly would never have seen a Russian asset like Donald Trump advance to the Oval Office not once but twice.
You know, Donald Trump is such a fuck up. He is a Russian asset, and people say, "You really think so?" I said,
Yeah.
I don't think he's purposely a Russian asset. I don't think he in his mind thinks he's a Russian asset, but he's so easily manipulated, and the Republicans know how to do it. The oligarchs know how to do it. He's just a little fucking puppet doing whatever anybody pats him on the head wants him to do. So he is an asset, but he's not a smart asset. He's a tool being used by a lot of people.
Well, but he is a literal Russian asset. We have a Russian
He is literal, yeah.
who was part of the governing body there of the Russian Secret Service and so forth, who names the person who was the one who managed to trump that he had a his code name was Daniela Kazarov, I believe it was Trump's code name, and that they groomed him for 40 years. This guy defected from Russia, and he has come right out and he has named names, given the timeline, and all of this. News won't touch it.
Yeah. Well, but what I'm saying about Donald Trump, it isn't like he sat in a room and strategized and
No.
worked out ways. I'm going to be a Russian asset and I'm going to help the Russians and this is what I'm going to do. I'm saying the Russians said, this is a dumb fuck. I
Yeah.
can make them do pretty much anything I want them to do. So he doesn't realize he's a Russian asset. But the Russians and whoever else, because I'm convinced the oligarchs are doing the same thing, Republican Party's doing the same thing. When he
Absolutely.
first got when he first got to be a candidate, I'm sure the Republicans, none of them liked him. Oh my
Mm.
God, he'll be a disaster. He'll be a disaster. Up until the time they realized we can control this motherfucker. We can get him to do whatever we want. So let's welcome him in and make him our tool and have him do the craziest shit. Shit we wouldn't have the courage to do ourselves. Donnie will fucking do it. Give it to Donnie. Donnie will do fucking anything.
But if you look at him when he met with Putin and went in with Putin with no cameras, no stenographer, nothing for 30 minutes to an hour, he was getting his instructions there. We know that he came out looking like a whipped pup.
Yeah,
And defied his own intelligence group and saying, no, they're wrong. Putin's a good guy. I mean, which we all know he's a war criminal. We had Marco Rubio the other day has now fully drunk the Kool-Aid and would not say in a Senate hearing that Putin is a war criminal, which he is. He is a war criminal. There is no doubt about it. But and he has even said that before, Rubio, that is. But now that we're trying to negotiate the end of a war, and so I can't call him a criminal. Bullshit, bullshit. He shouldn't. We shouldn't be negotiating crap. What we should be doing is funding Ukraine to kick the Russians' ass out, which they could do with proper funding from us in Europe. And right
absolutely.
now, the Polish are getting ready for the fall of Ukraine and Russia to push into their borders.
Well,
That's where we
and
are.
Vladimir Putin is literally a war criminal, wasn't he?
Yes.
Convicted at The Hague or something?
Yeah, oh, sure he is.
I
I
mean,
mean, he
he
captured children and took them into Russia, 20,000 of them. He's raining fire down on the civilian populations, hospitals, schools, all of that. He is definitely a war criminal. He
but
started,
if he
he took the Crimea, all of that, war criminal.
but if he showed up in the wrong country, he
He'd
could
be
be
arrested.
detained and put in
Sure.
jail. There's no
I don't
question
know why
about it.
they don't just sink his yacht with him on it. And we could do that.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Oh
wouldn't
yeah.
shed a tear.
No, absolutely not. We're getting toward the end, but we had another world leader come to the White House, the
South
president
Africa.
of South Africa, Ramaphosa.
Yeah.
I don't even know why this guy came because he had to know he was going to get ambushed, a la Zelensky. And he did. It was fucking ridiculous. It was embarrassing for the country, certainly embarrassing for the president. And Donald Trump spewing all these conspiracy theories. Um, that was horrific to watch. I mean, if you're going to
Right.
have him in there, you're setting him up so you can try to look like a tough guy. And everything you said was fucking untrue.
Right. And that should be the lead story on the evening news is that Donald Trump lied about South Africa. We have white South Africans stepping up and saying this is bullshit. We own 44% of all of the land in South Africa. All of the boards of all of the major industries here are all white. I mean, the standard of living for white people is much higher than it is for our black citizens, right? I mean, this is what the white people in South Africa are saying, right? And all of those crosses that were supposed to be dead white settlers, that lot of, and he had pictures from Angola and all of articles that he was showing that he's never read, that he knows nothing about. It was just a showpiece and just crap.
Well, and it was so typical of Donald Trump. He'd always do that when he had something he had to substantiate. He had all his people scour the internet to pick out these weird fucking articles, and then he just hands it to the president of South Africa. And the fact of the matter is, the video he showed, he made him watch the video,
Yeah.
um, and it was from the Congo or, like you say, Angola.
Yeah, I think
Um,
it was Congo. Yeah.
and so they're talking to Caitlin or Carolyn Levitt afterwards, and somebody
Yeah.
questions them. Do you have a problem with Donald Trump showing these videos in this paper that was a lie? And this is what she said. Uh, he wasn't lying. It was right there on the video. There was white crosses. They represent dead white farmers. And her whole argument was the fucking white crosses. Of course, that's what it means. It's just what's frustrating is there are people that go, yeah, she's right about that. White crosses, that was definitely white farmers. It wasn't even in fucking South Africa,
Exactly.
but they keep pushing the lies.
Yeah, well, that's what they do. That's what I'm saying. As long as they're allowed to lie, they will lie, and that's what they've been doing. I mean, we have it documented that every time Trump opens his mouth, it's a lie, and that's what should lead the evening news. Carolyn Levitt lied about Trump's lie again. That's what it should be. I mean, that's all she does. I can't imagine having a job that is your job to promote the lies that your boss tells and ream the reporters that are asking you legitimate questions and divert and call them names and keep them out and all of this stuff like Trump does. Anytime a reporter asks a really biting question, he says, "Oh, you're a disgrace. You're awful. ABC sucks. Blah blah blah." How they are able to sit there. They should stand up in mass, walk out every time that he does
They
that.
should. We are starting to see more reporters push back a little bit. And like you say, he reacts badly to it because he doesn't know what to do. How dare you question my lies? Do you think that's we're going to see more of that? I've always been under the belief once one person or two people step up, whether it be the media or other members of the Republican Party, once he starts losing his purchase on the control of the Republican Party. Once that starts to slip, I get the sense there's going to be a fucking monkey pile of media and Republicans that jump all over him. Once he's weakened to the point where he's not useful, they're just all going to go, yeah, I never liked that motherfucker and jump all over him. Do you see that actually ever happening?
I don't know. I don't think there's enough spine left in the Republican Party for that to ever happen. I really don't. I mean, if he were to melt down in the middle of and start babbling more than he normally does, or walk into a wall or something like that, there might be some sort of pushback, maybe. But the fact is, to invoke the Article 25, whatever it is, I think it's 25. It's his cabinet who has to do that. And,
Right.
they're worse than he is. They're each chosen to destroy the department they're in charge of or to mess it up in some way or other and get rid of it. So they're never going to come up and say he's incompetent.
But
What have
but
they got to fall back on? J.D. Vance, for God's sake.
well, yeah, that's true. But I mean when the crash happens.
Mm.
When the crash happens and he's done, he either passes away or he does something so horrific in public where people go, oh, no, that's too fucking far. Once that little avalanche starts, we're going to see people all over the Republican Party and the media when they can't bring them back from the dead, you know?
Well,
Those people that stood with him are going to say, yeah, he's a fucker.
let's see what happens in the Senate with this big ugly bill that they just passed in the House. What happens there? If they just double down and send it on to Trump, there's no hope. If they force some changes or something, maybe there's something going on there. If there's a huge long debate about it, the longer it goes, the better. Right now, if the Republican leadership wanted to bring it up for a vote, they could, and put the pressure on the three or four that want changes. They might be able to just get it done. I don't think that's going to happen because Josh Hawley is very adamant about not wanting to cut Medicare because, quite frankly, or Medicaid, quite frankly, most of his constituencies are on it.
Right.
Rand Paul has, it's the deficit thing. There are a few others that seem dead set against it, but they can only lose three or four. I forget what it is,
Right.
or it passes because
Right.
all the Democrats are going to vote against it. We know that, but they don't have the numbers to stop it without Republican defections. If that doesn't happen, then I don't know. I don't know where we are here at
Well,
that point.
I've heard something disconcerting, and if it wasn't the Democrats, I wouldn't believe it. But I'm hearing that some Democrats are just absolutely giddy. Kind of hope it does pass. So it crashes everything because they see if this passes, that means they're going to get wiped out. The Republicans are going to get wiped out in the midterms, which they probably be right because the pain will be felt immediately and it will affect a lot of red states and it will destroy the Republican Party. Now, the
It,
Republicans know this. Why they continue to try to do this, I don't know. But
there,
allegedly,
I,
there's some Democrats going, cool, let that fucker crash. Let these people suffer because then we'll win in the midterms. Do you think
and
that's
see, that's the problem. here. This is what I'm talking about, why the Democrats didn't get reelected. They did not reach out to those people who were hurting and didn't
Yeah.
see, they weren't doing any better under Biden much than they did under
Right.
Trump. They may have even done a little better under Trump because of a few, he got credit for things and so forth. But I saw a black lady. Well, Trump sent me a check, she said. I support Trump. He sent me a check. And that was early on, in the
Right.
pandemic and so forth. But that's what they remembered, right?
Right.
Democrats have to realize that unless just because the Republicans do it doesn't mean they're going to be blamed for it. If these people are still people in my neighborhood, if they're or in the town where I live, if they're still tuned into Fox, Fox ain't going to say that it was Republicans' fault that crashed the economy. They're going to find a way to blame the Democrats. Oh well, it was Biden's economy, blah 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 blah, whatever. Enough to confuse the issue. There's no guarantee that a crash would be blamed on the Republicans. It should be tax increases were the Republicans doing, but they blamed Biden because they happened during the Biden administration, even though they were put in place by the Republicans over 10 years to increase every 2 years. They didn't know that. And the Democrats, for some reason, weren't able to point that out.
I think the
So,
Democrats have to understand the only way their strategy, the way they're doing it, works is if the people in this country get smarter or better informed. And that's not going to happen. They're not going to get smarter, the Republicans and some Democrats. They're not going to get better informed because they're only going to watch what they want to watch, Fox News. So if we understand that they aren't going to get smarter, you got to change your tactics a little bit. And that's the frustrating thing about the Democrats. The establishment doesn't seem to want to do that. They just want to keep attacking Donald Trump, which they did going up to November 5th. Didn't work. So change that, but they're still counting on Donald Trump and the Republicans to sink themselves and just sit back and wait for that to happen. Well, we've been
well,
waiting for 10 fucking years and it didn't work.
yeah, I mean, they shouldn't. The Democratic base is going to be the Democratic base. The intellectuals, the whatever you want to call them, they're going to be the same. They're going to vote Democrat, right? You got to
Right.
reach down. You got to reach the working man and woman who are suffering, and the way you do that is what Pete Buttigieg does. You go on Fox. You go toe to toe. You be
Right.
brave. You step up. You fight them where in the trenches where they live. They'll watch that. They'll see that and maybe you'll make an impact. You got to go on talk radio. You got to, maybe you develop talk radio. Maybe you develop something that reaches that group of people because they just want what everybody wants. They watch TV, they see for commercials for stuff they can't afford that they think they'll never be able to afford. They see these big houses. I was looking in my newspaper. There's $1.3 million houses on Cherokee Lake down here, where most people around here live in single wide trailers.
Right.
They see that disparity, but they don't realize why that disparity is there. When you say, well, we'll lose our democracy if Trump stays in office, they don't care. They don't
Not
know
working
what
for
that
them.
means. Yeah, they don't know what that means. I had a conversation with a neighbor. How you doing? I said, well, I'm a little worried about the economy right now based on what's happening in Washington. And he goes, and this is a leading light in the city. I'm friendly with him, but he's definitely a rolling. Well, I think Trump's just shaking some stuff up to make it better. That's what he said. I let it go because I got to
Well,
live
when
here
is
for
it?
right now.
Yeah. When is it getting better? I mean, it never
Yeah.
gets better with
And
Donald
how
Trump.
is
It always gets worse.
and how's he going to do that? No plan, concepts for a plan, maybe. I don't know.
Well,
They
see,
don't
that
they don't get
that's
it.
what if you look at the campaign going up to November 5th, Democrats said we got to do this, we got to do that. It's not pie in the sky. We got to put some work in. We got to do this, and this is how we're going to do it. Donald Trump says I'm bringing down prices. I'm bringing down the inflation rate. I'm getting more jobs. Gas prices are coming down. No indication as to how he's going to do it. But people say that I like that. I like that. I want to hear that. Then when he gets in, he does just the opposite. And then they say, well, it's going to take some time, which
Yeah.
is opposite of what they
And
said.
pain and pain.
Yeah, let's get
There's
some
going
pain in here. Let's
yeah.
get some pain. I've had enough fucking pain. It's time we start winning here once again. Well, Ed, I'm going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I've held you here for an hour and a half. I've got a cold. I probably can't go on any longer. You're 75. I know you can't go on any longer. This is fucking nap time for Ed. But I appreciate you coming on. It's always a pleasure, and I always enjoy the conversation.
Yeah, me too. Go take some meds.
I'm gonna go take some meds. I got a we're going to be doing a little duty with our granddaughter, watching her because my daughter-in-law is going to have a baby in the next week. So shit's going to be
Mm,
flying around here, and it's all
yeah.
going to be good news. So I'm excited about that. But I'm a little old to be expecting that kind of stamina. So I'll need some more rest and certainly some cold medicine and the support of my wife. My wife finally got her sling off,
All
so
right.
it's still hard to use, but we're making progress there too. So.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. You guys take care. I'm going to go mow the lawn.
Oh, fuck. I don't want to. I'm glad I don't have to do that. Well, thanks, Ed. And for those of you listening, I want to thank you for taking the time to do that. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.